Okay, good afternoon and welcome to our webinar on the best of breed versus integrated solution. I think we can get started. I see we have already a couple of attendees coming in, so the rest of them can join us during the session. So first of all, welcome. Before we get started, I would like to share some of our housekeeping rules. So please choose to receive your audio. We recommend you to use a full screen, of course. During this webinar, you will be muted. But if you have any questions, feel free to ask them using the chat function or the Q&A section, which has been provided for that. So the webinar will be recorded and available on the website afterwards. And most important, please enjoy your lunch. So you can hear me talking. My name is Stijn Hermans. I do the new business development for Aexis Belgium within the CPM business unit. I will provide you with a short introduction today on Aexis, very short, and our core activities. Then my colleague Christian, he will bring you two use cases and talk about items that impact your TCO when choosing for best of breed or best of suite. And I will end the session with some recent trends, pros and cons, and a call to action. But maybe first, Christian, can you say hi as well?
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Nice to be talking to you. As Stijn mentioned, I will be telling you about what impacts the TCO when you make a decision for best of breed or an integrated approach for your software, and I will do that later on. So back to you, Stijn, first now.
Okay, thanks. So Aexis, who we are, short introduction, founded since 1975, Aexis branded since 1993. We have offices in Belgium, HQ in Zaventem, the Netherlands, also available, Luxembourg and France. We have a team of around 130 colleagues. Here at the bottom, you see a couple of customer references. You see we are mainly present within the enterprise segment or the bigger mid-size segments. For example, we do business with the Belfius, Aexa, KBC, Alpro, now part of the Danone Group, Proximus, and in the Netherlands, with Rai, Amsterdam, Albron, for example, Telpa network. If you look at our Aexis expertise, so short about our main core competences, we have two big business units or two big departments, let's say. The first one on the left is BI, the BI for finance, and the CPM corp performance management. So if you talk about BI for finance, this is the dashboards for the CFO and the dashboards for the finance office. If we look at CPM, then we talk then about the key financial processes, for example, planning, budgeting, forecasting, the management reporting, and of course, the consolidation at the end of the year and the statutory consolidation of also. So you see here as well, data integration. So for us, it's very important to have a good financial solution, to have the data well integrated into your systems. And then we have the second business, and if you want to become more data-driven, we have two big sides there. It's the big data and the data governance. Of course, big data is a huge term, but this mainly means that we connect data sources and turn the data that is in these systems into information. And to have this well set up, you have to have a good data governance, and this means how you organize your data within your organization. For example, giving meaningful definitions within your master data management, and for example, an enterprise catalog for the business users. A third part, and this is the services, next to helping our customers in the search for their best of breed solution. Of course, we also deliver services, for example, to assist in the implementation and become a one-stop shop for our customers. For example, we help creating the blueprints. We go to technical design, the user acceptance testing, the implementation itself, and we do training and application support. Here at the bottom, you see a couple of our products of our solutions we bring to the market. Aexis is actually a multi-vendor solution provider. This means that we bring solutions to our customer, and we see that software is actually an enabler to come to a best of breed solution. And best of breed, this is the, let's say, the topic of the session today, means that for a specific process or function within an organization, you will need a specific tool. We are not going to talk too much today about the tools and the products you see here below. This is not the idea of the webinar, but if you have any questions, feel free to get in touch and we will give you a video call during a very good explanation about all the solutions. The idea or the topic of today is we talk about CPM. And if you see that CPM solutions, of course, you have a difference between your financial planning and analysis and reporting. So for example, let's say that your organization has decided to move away from Excel and wants to select a tool. Then it is very important to define which process you want to support and what functionality you want to have or you want to achieve with your tool. If you see then FP&A, of course, this is the financial planning and analysis. The first topic is budgeting. You have to question yourself, what do you want to do with your budget? Do you want to compare different budget scenarios, or you want to see different versions, for example? Another one is it a financial budget? So for example, your revenue, will it increase next year with 2%? Then as a baseline, we will take the revenue of last year and then, or this year, and then we add 2%. But this does not give you a lot of information, of course. What impacts this increase? If we then compare to that, do it driver based, this will give you more information on what affects this revenue, because then you have a driver base, you have price multiplied by quantity, and then you see what happens if, for example, we increase price, or we try to increase or compare it to volume and see how your revenue is impacted. So you see the difference between a financial budget or driver-based budget. It's a very different approach. You will need a different tool for this. If we go to forecasting, what are you going to forecast? Is this the year to end forecast? So until the end of the year, then you do your first forecast, of course, in April. You have the 3+9. Then you do the second one in June or July. You have the 6+6, and then in September 9+3. But compared to that, you also have the rolling forecast. Then you have the first one in April, and this one is for 12 to 18 months. This forecast rolls into the next year, and the functional needs between these two is actually very different. Another one, and if we look at predictive data and AI, we advise you to invest time in understanding the value of adding predictive data to, for example, your forecast, to pre-populate your forecast based on historical data or other data sources. And this will bring you as a business controller and your organization to a next level. So this is really something to investigate further in the future. What will be predictive and how can we include artificial intelligence? Then if we look at analysis, of course, based on what you want to do your analysis, is this prior year, is this compared to actuals, is this the plan you want to see, or how do I want to see my figures? Is this over the profit centers, is this cost centers, is this, for example, month compared to another month, is this the regions, products? So you see, the way you want to see your figures can be very different and can be very different dimensions. So this brings me to reporting. And if we look at management reporting, for example, how do I want to create my reporting? And we also want to see this for my legal entities, or do we have several legal entities with service lines? And do we want to see these service lines run over all these legal entities? The complexity is very different because this is another dimension, an analytical layer you put on top. So the tools you will need for this will be very different. Another very important thing when we talk about reporting is the user community. Do they want to receive a PDF in their email each day, each month, each week? Or do they want to have a full dashboard in a web interface? And this web interface, this dashboard that is visible, is this a dynamic dashboard or is it just a static dashboard? So you see there's lots of things to take into account when you choose your tool or your solution. Then we go to the consolidated reporting, of course. But what is important when we talk about consolidation, first thing is, it is important to always have your traceability of, for example, your consolidation bookings, your consolidation adjustments, your intercompany elimination. So where do we have a matching and where we don't have a matching? And next to that, what will be the impact, for example, if we increase or decrease a participation of my consolidation, of my organization, and what will be the impact on my consolidated P&L? So you see, it's very different as well. And another very important thing to take into account, depending on the size of your organization, is of course, we have the case of IFRS 16. How will this be added into the tool? You see, and it is also a very important thing. Is it local or is it the group gap? If we go then to the statutory reporting, it's the last part of the reporting thing. Now we have our consolidated report. How are we going to publish it? Is this an export to an XBRL format, for example? Is this required? Is it SF compliancy required for real estate? And this is why, if we talk about CPM, and if we want all these things in one tool, well, there's no tool that will be able to do that all. It is possible that a tool can do this all, but there will always be one function or process which is in the DNA of this tool and for which they are best in class. And this is what we understand under the thing of best of breed. And this is very important to think about, which brings us actually to the next part of the webinar where Christian, my colleague, he will interfere. And we first have a poll. So the poll is the statement: do we have an FP&A and the reporting preferably managed in one single integrated platform? And you should normally now have it popped up. Do you agree, or do you don't agree? Do you mean is like FP&A should be in the same tool where we have the reporting? Should it be in the same, or do we have two tools for this? So now you have 10 to 15 seconds to answer, and Christian will take over the screen. Christian, the floor is yours.
Okay, Stijn, thank you very much. I hope you can all hear me clearly. So I will proceed with the presentation for this part indeed. I hope you can all see the poll and the statement on your screen, and I hope you're all able to click your preferred answer. Later on in this presentation, I will tell you a little bit more about the details and what really are the factors that come into place when you're up to taking a decision for a new software solution and you have to decide on either work on a best of breed approach or work with a best of suite approach. I do notice there's a question coming in. Please do so. Very welcome to answer your questions, of course. What we will do is we will get back to the questions after the presentation, of course. And well, if I might see them along the way and catch them in immediately, of course, I will do that as well. The results of the poll should be in your screen, I think, already. Most of you agree that both FP&A and reporting should preferably be managed in a single integrated platform. And of course, there's also some people who do not agree, who might think they have some reasons, of course, to think otherwise, and it should be better managed in separated solutions. Of course, this is a very, this is an interesting split in opinions people have. There's not always one good single answer, of course. Like many questions, there are lots of details to take into consideration. So what we would like to do now is, take you into some considerations and talk to each other about what really comes into place, and we will share some of our insights based on the experience Aexis has with these kinds of decisions. Well, to do that, I would like to proceed by introducing you to two different companies, two fictional companies who act as a business case for which we can further tell you more about how they look at this matter. So we have two fictional companies. On the left side, we have a company who has invested in a single platform, a company who typically just is standardized on a big ERP vendor like ERP or like SAP or Oracle, well, in this case, SAP. On the right-hand side, we have a company who seeks for the best solution for every specific challenges they might face ahead and for every process they might have. Of course, this is a descriptive example to give you an idea about what starting points can be. And these two kinds of companies typically come to contact with Aexis, usually at some point in which there is either some optimization to be done, or there's a legacy system in place which needs to be replaced, or lots of times there's a lot of Excel sheets, a lot of data in Access databases, Excel sheets, separated BI tools, legacy tools. And then those are typically points in which a company may decide to replace that and come into contact with Aexis, for example. Of course, these are just examples, but it gives you a good idea, and keep this in mind, that of course you could be standardized on a big vendor, or you could work with multiple solutions. And of course the names, the examples that are given here, they might be very different, of course, depending on each situation. Well, if you do decide on to do a project, or to optimize your processes, or to implement a different solution, for example, for your FP&A or for your reporting, or you need some dashboarding capabilities, you need to align your operational and financial data, or cases like that, then there are a few things to consider, of course. So I will talk to you basically into 6 items that do have an impact on the total costs of a solution. There are many things who, of course, have a quite obvious impact. Of course, licenses, software, implementation costs, and things like that you can all probably imagine. There are also a lot of things that do have a major impact and are very important to take into consideration, and also do have an impact on the TCO, but it might be indirect or maybe only in time. So as a first point, of course, what's very important is you will have to define what is the scope of what you will have to realize. What do you need to do? Do you need an FP&A tool? Do you need a tool for your consolidation and your group reporting? Are you specifically looking for a BI tool that gives you visualizations? Do you need external reporting requirements? In which industry are you based, of course? Is it heavily regulated or is it not? And then you can look at all kinds of these software solutions and all kinds of processes which Stijn has elaborated on. And one thing that's very important to keep in mind is the vendor that is offering the solution, is it offering it from a native background, or is it been acquired over the years? And to give you an idea, lots of specifically ERP vendors like SAP and Oracle, but also BI and CPM vendors like IBM, for example, they have acquired a lot of software over the years. So SAP took over Outlook Soft in 2007, which later on became SAP BPC, for, of course, which you may be familiar with for a planning and consolidation solution. The same goes for Oracle. They bought Hyperion or HFM, and actually also IBM, which is not really an ERP vendor, but in their portfolio of software, they acquired Cognos, and Cognos in his place acquired Applix for its FP&A solution, which is now known as Planning Analytics. And in some years before that, they acquired Frango, which is now known as IBM Cognos Controller for consolidation, which are in fact acquired solution. That doesn't mean it's a bad thing, of course, but it's something to keep into consideration. That it's not always a native offering the vendor has developed. What comes in place for this as well is, from an ERP vendor, of course, it's not really their focus point. For a BI or CPM vendor, it is their bread and butter. It is their core business. For an EP vendor like SAP, it's not. It's just something in their suite, of course, which they offer. A thing that's kind of attached or in the a bit stretched from functional needs is the tool flexibility. If you need to upscale fast, if you have increasing complexity, if you're in a growing business, of course, that's something to keep in mind. But it's also from a functional point of view. Do you like to start with having a financial consolidation tool in which you can do your eliminations and your intercompany balances? Do you also want to grow into FP&A solution? Do you need some driver-based planning at some point? Do you want to start with it and later on grow into other solutions? Do you need analytical KPIs of capabilities? Those are all questions you need to ask before choosing a tool, of course. And what comes in place is the decision: do you think there's a one size fits all for you, or do you need to have some dedicated capabilities? So for instance, there are lots of tools who offer do a very good job in consolidation. Like, for instance, you have these point solutions like LucaNet, Sigma Conso, but also IBM Controller is one of those solutions. They are very, very good in statutory reporting, offering reports on a financial basis, but it's not really an analytical tool. They're not really into analysis. They do not offer quite as good solutions for planning or forecasting or reporting or drill down capabilities, because it's not really their DNA. Some other points, of course, one thing that's very important is the user experience. Well, it's largely based on your user community. So one thing to keep in mind, for instance, is do you have the same employees who will have to work in multiple processes? If so, then it would be highly recommendable to look at the user experience that they will have in both processes. So if you have separated softwares, and one person should be working with the monthly closing, they will be uploading trial balances, they will be doing consolidation, intercompany balancing. And if they're also involved in providing a monthly forecast, for instance, and they will have to do that in a separate tool, that's of course a downside. If you then have an integrated approach and you can work in one solution, That's of course it's the most convenient for the user in case. Um, Reflecting on the point I told earlier on about the acquisitions that big vendors have done over the years, one thing to keep in mind is that from some larger vendors, of course, if they acquire several software solutions in their portfolio, that does not necessarily mean that they also integrate the user interfaces with each other. Sometimes, and in many cases, in the end, it are still different tools with their own user experiences and their own way of working and their own technology, of course, in the end. Um, well, of course, some more points on the slides here, like for instance, of course, this has an impact on training, documentation, knowledge transfer in general. That, of course, is also the case. If we look a little bit further into another set of items that do have an impact on the TCO, we will come into the case of data integration. Classically, of course, it's a downside of having multiple applications. You do want to have a shared view on your actuals, your budget, your forecasts, your operational data, your financial data. That's crucial. If you will have several applications, you need to share those data between those applications, either via direct connections, and you might have a data warehouse in place. Some other choices that might have an impact on this. And there are lots of questions you need to ask yourself, like at what level of detail do you even need your integration? Do you need it almost real time, or is once a day, once a week, is that sufficient? So for instance, if we work within projects, we usually have for financial closing process, for instance, the data does not really have to be real time. It's just once every 24 hours or once a day will be sufficient, plus the ability to update it whenever you want. But of course, if you look into an operational BI solution, which you want to integrate with your financial solutions, then it's a different case, and you might want to have a real-time or almost real-time view on your data sets. Also here to keep in mind is there are lots of involvements, lots of trends, lots of movement around data integration about what's happening and how you can do this. The technology is evolving really fast at this time. So there is some things that are important right now, and it's not always that data integration is really that complex anymore, luckily. And also one key thing to keep in mind is sometimes if you buy software from one vendor, that of course doesn't always mean that there's no data integration in place. But on the other end, if you buy software from one vendor, you might think, and it should be, of course, that the vendor takes responsibility for keeping up the data integration processes and ensuring that they will work fine for your software. What's very, of course, related to data integration is the technical architecture. The technical architecture, of course, is highly based on your IT strategy. So one of the first questions, of course, is do you work on premise? Do you work in the cloud? Do you have a private cloud? Do you want to host your software with a vendor? And also other questions like where's your data stored? Do you have a data warehouse? Where are your other applications? There's lots of technical questions, but what we mean with architecture, which is more important specifically for CPM and BI, is what kind of technology are you using or do you want to use related to your functional needs, as highlighted as point one. So do you, for instance, need a tool which allows you to analyze your financial performance? Do you need a tool which is highly capable of doing an analysis on large amounts of data? Do you need drill down scenarios? Do you need driver-based forecasting? Then there are all kinds of analytical tools. They offer a multidimensional database usually, or OLAP, queue-based, as you might be familiar with, which is quite different from a relational database, which is more, which would be the option of first choice for storing data, for financial reporting, for consolidation. But it's a different approach, a different tool. And of course, if you have one solution, truly one solution, then it will work with one database technology. And that's something which is highly important to think about and will largely impact your total costs in the years to come, because it has a major impact on the implementation aspects of your software solution. This architecture is, of course, from a technical point of view, also important for maintenance, which is the last point on this slide. Maintenance can be defined from a functional or technical point of view. From a technical point of view, of course, you need to consider what the capabilities of your staff is and what's your ambition, of course, on this. If you might have a cloud strategy and you go work with SaaS offerings, then the vendor will largely take responsibility for the technical maintenance, of course. But there's always still the functional maintenance. So if your users need to maintain the application, need to define the reports, the structures, the workflow, and of course, in the context of a decision for one integrated solution or a best of breed approach, you might end up working with multiple solutions, having, of course, a very different approach on learning, on documentation, training of your staff, compared to an integrated solution. So that all comes down in the end to the kind of flexibility you need and the kind of way you want to work with that. So having said that, I give the word back to Stijn, and he will tell you a little bit more about what the recent trends are in this subject. Back to you, Stijn.
Okay, thanks, Christian. Thanks a lot for the things you said. I think I have 4 minutes left, so I will start off with some recent trends we've seen lately. First of all, I think it's very important that we take into account that we have to be agile and flexible. This means we are having a fast changing business environment these days, so it's very important to look for flexible solutions. Because we see that hybrid landscapes are more and more common. This means that a hybrid landscape is external and internal solutions, so you have to find a good way in how flexible you want to go and how agile can we react on this. Another very important trend is the software as a service market. You see that we have a very fast growing landscape of business solutions. And there it's very important to see what are your functional requirements. This means there's lots of software SaaS services, software as a service tools coming up and where. But it's very important to see what are the functional requirements. And it's also very important to know that we these days are anytime, anywhere available, these services, because they are web enabled through all devices possible. A very important thing is the cloud computing. So we see that these days, cloud is becoming more and more important because, first of all, it's scalable. This means that you can easily upscale or downscale your IT requirements. And it's a quick start and setup with a small initial investment. This means that you can set up your cloud computing environment within a couple of days. And it's easily to say, okay, we just start with this and we scale up our IT requirements the way we need it. So this is very interesting, and it's a very interesting thing to take into account or take into consideration the coming years. Also, like Christian was talking about integration, we see that these days there are lots of out-of-the-box connectors available. We see that standard REST APIs are available, and we quite often see as well that tools, they come with ETL functionalities out of the box. Next to that, we also see that there are kind of some IT tools which are really focusing on the integration between two systems. This is called the connections as a service or a cloud sub integration platform. So this means that integration is becoming easier each day. So this means that an integrated solution depends on the way you see it. This brings me to my almost last slide, the pros and cons of both solutions. So if we look at best of suite, of course, it's a all-in-one platform. This brings us to one central user interface, which of course means normally it's one tool, and this means less training. Of course, you take into account that, for example, with a huge SAP or Microsoft environment, this looks a bit the same, but these are not always the same tools you're using. And it's a very important thing to take into account that once it's an all-in-one platform, it's vendor locking. This is not so easy. When we look at best of breed, of course, we have multiple user interfaces. We need to take care of several tools. This means that our people using it need more competences and require more training. The good thing is that we don't have vendor locking. When we look again at best of suite, we can have multiple processes within one tool. This means that the process is not always the DNA of the tool. Functions are added over time, so we have more functionalities, but we have less flexibility. If we then look at best of breed, of course, this is one specific process, and the process is in the tool, its DNA. And within this specific process, we have more possibilities and more flexibility. Then if we go to the integration part, we see that, of course, best of suite usually is one native integration. So they have one integrated solution architecture. Of course, if we think about acquired software, it has to be added as well to this solution architecture. So it is a native in between barracks. We see that, of course, it's a higher risk when you have to upgrade your system. The full system has to be upgraded. As well, if there's a system failure, you have to take into account that, for example, if something goes down, the full system is going down. So lots of processes are going down. If we look at the best of breed, we have an API integration, which means, okay, we have separate solution architectures to take care of, but this can be whole figured in one solution architecture. And with the standard APIs, like I explained, and the cloud availability, this is becoming less and less a challenge and becoming more and more an improvement or let's say a benefit. We have lower risk when upgrading, or if system failure is taking some system down, this means that only this process is down and not the full process of your organization. Then our call to action. For those who know Aexis, we are, of course, we have a CPM quick scan. Might already have been a little bit explained what it is, but what we do is we have an online assessment led by our Aexis consultants, and this includes an analysis of your current processes, your reporting framework, apart your business drivers and your KPIs. And the benefit of this is that from our expertise, we can give you advice on how to improve your CPM process. Of course, this includes also a discussion with the key users and a presentation of the B2B solution. This is all we can do for a fixed fee of 3,500 euros. And best of all, if you can't wait and you want to start today, we launched today an Aexis free of charge CPM maturity scan. We also had a data maturity scan a couple of months ago, which was a big success. And that's why we now have launched our CPM maturity scan, which is going to give you an idea of how mature your CPM organization or setup is. Are you just becoming, let's say, aware of your process or already best in class? Visit our website and go to the cpmmaturity.com. And if you fill out this assessment, you get your, it only takes 5 minutes, you straight away get your results. And on top of that, you get a 750 euros discount on your CPM quick scan. So I think I see one question coming in. We can maybe answer the one. But one last thing, maybe for the people who have to go to our website, cpmmaturity.com. It only takes you 5 minutes. We have 20 questions, which will quickly lead you to the idea of how mature your organization is today. We will also answer now your questions. Let's see in the chat. So, okay, yeah, okay. Can we get the presentation? Yeah, the recording will be accessible after this session on our website. So that's it. I don't think there's any other questions. I hope you enjoyed our session today. Thanks for being here, and we will see you next time. Thanks a lot and have a great day. Bye.